To advise those present at this meeting, the Board of Education of the Pinelands Regional School District in the County of Ocean that adequate notice of this meeting was provided in accordance with the Open Public Meeting Act. The notice has been posted in the Board of Education office, junior high school, and high school buildings. The notice was also mailed to the Press of Atlantic City and filed with the municipal clerks of Bass River Township, Eagleswood Township, Little Lake Harbor Township, and the Borough of Tuckerton. Mr. Brown.
Need a motion to go into executive?
We need roll call first.
Oh, sorry, yeah, sorry. Mr. Bonnicky, absent. Mrs. Chambers.
Here.
Mrs. Ernst.
Yes.
Ms. Hannadell.
Yes.
Mr. Kubricki.
Here.
Mrs. McVeigh.
Yes.
Ms. Palladino.
Here.
Ms. Bakakua.
Yes.
Mr. Williams. All right.
Can I have a motion to go into executive session for approximately 1 hour for the purpose of negotiations, attorney-client communications, personnel, and personnel matters?
So moved. Second?
Okay, Mr. Bonnicky, I'm sorry. Ms. Chambers.
Just say yes.
Ms.
Motion
Ernst.
for executive.
Yes.
Ms. Hannadell.
Yes.
Mr. Kubricki.
Yes.
Ms. McVeigh.
Yes.
Palladino.
Yes.
Ms. Bakakua.
Yeah.
We are in executive at 6:01. Roll call, Mrs. Chambers.
Here.
Mr. Ernst, this is the
Yeah, just say
confirm
yes.
out of executive.
Yes.
Yeah. Ms. Hannadel?
Yes.
Mr. Kubricki? Yes. Ms. McVeigh?
Yes.
Ms. Palladino?
Yes.
Ms. Pakakua?
Yes.
And can we call back in to Mr. Williams,
Sure.
who is
What am I doing,
participating
9?
telephonically?
9-1 and then the number.
1. Come on, Melissa, give it to me. 609.
I couldn't break it up, I'm sorry. Here it is, hang on. Need it? Nope.
609.
Alright, hang up. Alright.
No.
1,
9,
1,
1,
609.
609.
276.
Don't say that right.
Good evening, Mr. Williams. We are out of executive and back in the media center. Executive session has been closed with a motion by Ms. Hannadel and seconded by Karen. So, just Tommy needs to vote though, right?
Mr. Williams, are you present?
Yes. Yes.
All right, thank you.
All right, can we all rise for the Pledge of Allegiance, please? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I would like a motion to approve the agenda, and I'm gonna ask Amy, I know we're tabling something, do we need to do that now or when we come to it?
When you come to that motion.
Okay, so a motion to approve the agenda, please.
Motion. Second.
All those in favor, I guess we can do that,
All in
yeah.
favor?
Aye.
Any opposition?
Aye.
All right, motion carries.
We can certainly hear you, Tommy.
I'm sorry.
It's all right.
These are pirates.
We've upped our ante in, technology here. Okay, first is the report of the superintendent. I will turn it over to Dr. McCooley.
I actually don't have much. I just wanted to thank Karen Kenny, her staff, and all the teachers for very smooth testing that's been taking place. And I know a lot of the teachers had to give up their classrooms and, help out and accommodate. So I just wanted to thank the staff and Karen for that. That's it.
Okay, thank you. And we are also going to have a presentation by Mr. Brown, which is kind of I like to call it the state of finances.
Yeah, thank you. Mr. Ernst had asked that I provide the board with an update on our current finances, and so I want to give you guys a quick overview of that. I'm going to be quite honest, I'm concerned. And I'm going to break those concerns into two buckets. This year's problems and next year's problems. So I'm going to give you a quick overview real quick. Like other schools in the region, Pinelands is faced with this declining revenues through the loss of state aid, rising costs, which are what we're all dealing with, a lot of salary and health benefits, and stagnant enrollment. And for this upcoming budget, we're facing rifts to be able to balance the budget for 1920. Of primary concern is that our cash and reserve balances are extremely low relative to the size of our budget. Our total reserves are down 71% since 2013. Our unassigned fund balance is down 21% in that same period. Those two things, your unassigned fund balance and your reserves, are your financial flexibility. We have none. And so I want you to also consider that I have the fund balance, the change in fund balance, the constant decreasing of our fund balance. It indicates that we're losing the ability to fund operations and handle these things when they come by unexpectedly. So this year's problem is that there is less than $1 million left in the budget. We've covered health benefits and salaries for the staff for the rest of the year. We have our obligations covered. But there's less than 1 million of the 35 million or 32 million left in the budget unspent. Next year's problem is, oh, I'm sorry, let me go back. I wanted to share with you too that one of the BAs in a school district from Central Jersey sent out a survey. And we had 50 school districts respond to it. And in that survey, they asked some simple questions. What's your operating budget? And what are all your reserve balances? Okay? And I want to give you an idea of where we stand in this unofficial survey of 50 schools. Of them, our total operating budget was 28th out of 49 schools. We were near the middle. The middle of the pack was about 42,000, and we were 32. Our total reserve balance was 39 out of the 49 schools that participated in the survey. Our ratio of reserves to our operating budget, which is a very simple total amount of reserves divided by the operating budget, was ranked 40th out of 49 respondents in the survey. I am offering to you that there is, this evidence is, these are from our audited financials. This isn't debatable. We are in a tenuous financial state. We're riffing this year to make the budget. The picture next year is concerning. So our contractual obligations next year will increase by a minimum of $800,000. That's salary and health benefits, assuming the contractual raises and the 4% increase from health benefits. Our tax levy, if we go to 2%, is $400,000. So we can raise revenue $400K, but our costs are going to go up $800K. Then you factor in the $85,000 we're going to lose in state aid. We start the 2021 budget cycle down over $500,000 if we go to 2%. There's a chart in there that shows you the actual tax levy versus 2% tax levy going from 13 and looking forward. I'm going to suggest, and I know this is not a popular opinion with taxpayers anywhere or with anybody on the board, but we need to bank on the district to be able to sustain operations, needs to be able to bank on consistent revenue of 2% of the cap. And in next year, we might need to utilize bank cap in order to maintain this. The only way out of this hole is revenue. We can't cut our way here. This is not a spending problem, this is a revenue problem. And I wanted to make sure that we express this to the board and to the public so they understood the nature of our finances. Are there any questions?
Don't we have, because we didn't do the 2% for, what, the last 3 years?
That's
Bank
the
It's on the
chart.
chart.
That's the
Can't
bank
see this
cap.
one?
It shows what you went to each year.
Well, don't we have some, so we did one?
We have this year, we have 1.2 million in available banked cap. We are in the budget that we proposed that was approved, the tentative budget that was approved by the county, which will be discussed at the April 30 meeting. We were proposing utilizing bank cap of, I want to say 330,000, somewhere in that ballpark.
If we don't use it, don't we lose it?
Well, you would lose some of it, not the full 1.2 million. You would lose,
No.
you would lose whatever portion was 3 years old or older. The oldest portion falls off.
So you can keep it for 3 years. When you get into year 4, that year 1 drops off and your
You know what that
3-year
amount
block moves.
Is that bigger than 330?
What's that? The amount we're picking up next year?
No, the 330, what's falling off?
I don't have that number, but I'll email it over to you. I have to look in the budget software for that.
So the 330, and so if I
No, no, go ahead.
misspeak, please. The
Yeah.
330 is what was reflected in the tentative budget that we approved at last month's meeting, which puts us over the 2%.
So the
tax
2% is what is going to just 2% of the tax levy, not the operating budget. Our tax levy is 19 million and change, 20 million. So we get 2% of that. That's where the 400,000 comes from. We are asking for an additional 330, which brings the total percentage to 3.6, if I'm not mistaken. Do I have that on one of these papers? So, yeah, that use of bank cap takes us from the 2% cap to the 3 and change. We have that bank cap because we did not go to 2% in years past. What I'm positioning is that it may be better for consistent, sustainable operation that the board commits to the 2% obligation. Because knowing where we're going in state aid cuts over the next several years, we're going to need that to maintain the operations.
Is there a projection for state aid cuts over the next 5 years?
Yes.
Yes, that's it's in the budget committee folder. I believe it's titled S2 cuts or something along those lines. I can forward that to you later too, Mr. Williams.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. Like I say, I can't stress enough that this is not a problem of our doing. You know, this is, if you look around what's happening around New Jersey right now, and I've sent some of these articles out when I get them, but there are dozens of schools that are in this exact same situation. If you look at the survey, there's schools with $100 million budgets that have lower reserve balances than we do. I mean, there are many reasons and ways to get where we're at. I think the important thing for us is that we set goals as a board that support the initiatives that we're trying to undertake, and that everybody understands that we're tight right now, and that we're doing what we can to be disciplined with spending. But the other side of that is there needs to be consistent revenues to go with it.
So I think part of our challenge in recent years has been the declining student population.
Mm-hmm.
Right, so if that begins to stabilize, and I think we do see that this year, were we actually upping dozen
We were
kids?
flat this year. I think we were
Right,
down
so
1 or
if we
2
start to
kids.
stabilize that,
Mhm.
I think that could help.
And I want to add too, Mrs. Fresca interviewed the students for her academy. She has 13 students that are going to be entering into the law academy, and several of them told her that they were planning on going to Mates, and now they're staying here because of the academy. So I know that, we've questioned, the money for it, and but it is actually keeping our students in district because they have the opportunities now. And then we're hoping through the JAGs to keep some of our students that are really more job-oriented, maybe not going to VOTech, or that may have, gone to a different school. So the programs are helping.
Right.
Any other questions?
Can I ask again? So
Yeah.
I just thought we weren't at 2% all of these years, but it shows 2%. So I'm confused by that too.
So I
It's
took,
probably like 1.7 or
yeah,
so,
rounded.
right? He's rounding to 2.
Are you just rounding to 2?
oh yeah, I might not have the decimal place over there. I apologize, I didn't even think about that, my apologies. But so when I look at 213, that's 17.7, going straight down under there, I'm sorry, the 2% annuals, where I take in 2014, that 18,093, that's 2% of the prior year, and then I go 2% down every year. So if we went 2% from 14 on, our tax levy this year would be 21.2 million. And instead it's, I'm sorry, that's projected for 2022. I'm back up. If we go 2% every year, our tax levy is 19,976. Instead it's 19,466, a difference of $500,000. Go back to what we talked about next year's budget. We're short $500,000. I think what the difference is, and I don't want to say any amount of money is immaterial, right? We have $250,000 in capital reserves in the bank. That's a lot of money, but a payroll is $900. It's not a lot of money in a $35 million budget. And so they are significant dollars, but they're not significant dollars in sustaining our operation at the current level.
I guess I'm wondering, are you also asking us, so you're saying that we shouldn't, we need to commit to 2. Are you also saying we should use all the bank cap, or you can't do that?
Well, no, we could, but certainly not this year. I think if I could paraphrase for Ms. Poklakua and the rest of the committee, that option was never on the table. And I think that they're stressing that we be as disciplined as we can in this spending so that we're using as little of that bank cap as possible, not just this year, but any year. Our hope would be we don't ever need to go in and take 1.2 million. But next year, we know, looking ahead, that we're starting behind the eight ball without considering any of the other factors. Just salary, benefits, and changes in revenue, we're down $500,000. And the last point I want to make to you too is, when it comes to the impact on the taxpayer, think about this year's budget, where we're utilizing cap, and we're going with a rate of 3.6, whatever that final rate is. In Little Lake Harbor, where home values stayed pretty stagnant, they were up 0.5%. That change ended up being $30-some a year. And this will we'll do a presentation at the April meeting that clearly defines these things. So their home prices stay stable. Their impact's about $30 a year, $3 a month, something like that. Bass River, where home prices go down significantly in the assessed value year over, that same amount means $85 a year to a Bass River resident. Or I'm sorry, Eagleswood, where you had declining values again, same thing, same budget, but there's going to be $75 a year. Tuckerton, where your values went the other way and you got reassessed and we had a huge swing up in value, that same budget will reduce your tax bill by $20 a year. The number one driver is assessed values. And I don't want to push this into a bigger conversation of that, but protecting the assessed value of your home is how you protect the tax dollar. And in your different communities, that has different implications. And I know in Bass River, where they might not want certain types of commercial development, or in Little Lake, where they've certainly looked to more new commercial development. Little Lake Harbor, as an example, is 89% residential. So every dollar we get, 9 out of every $10 we get from a homeowner. You need a good, stable commercial base to keep revenues consistent from that side. When we're all residential, it makes it a little harder. And you tend to ebb and flow a little more with the housing market.
And I think the last few years, if I think back 5 years ago, with everyone trying to recover from Sandy, I mean, that was a huge concern for the district in trying to keep our costs down because valuations were going down.
I guess my problem is, I go to these state meetings and the county meetings, and everybody complains about the 2%, and we're probably the only people I know who took less than the 2%. And I just see that as being a problem, that we did it at all. And I know that there were reasons for it, but it's just like everybody wants more than 2%, and we've struggled to keep it under the 2%, but it's definitely hurt us.
Well, the other side of that is it makes the ebbs and flow annually a little bit. If we only go to 1 next year and then we go to 4 this year, we average 2 over those times, right? So if you're being consistent in generating revenue, it allows a little more consistency in spending it. And there are a number of factors. And again, this is not a Little Lake Harbor Pinelands problem. My personal opinion is this S2 very unfairly impacts all districts that were impacted by Sandy, because you're looking at a 6-year window of enrollment that started in 2012. Who in these districts impacted by Sandy are going to see a positive enrollment change from 2012 to today? Probably very few. So the state's argument is, but you got all that extra money those years that those kids were out of the school, from 2012 to today. We funded you like all those kids were there. You didn't save the money.
But we had to pay to transport those kids elsewhere, or they were treated as homeless, which we were paying for.
Yeah, and that's it. I mean, those types of unbudgeted expenses, and we talked about it a little bit earlier, are really the need. They're the main driver for needing that financial flexibility in the budget. And I think that's probably a really good example if you look at 13 and 14, where we start seeing declining unassigned fund balance. We're seeing that because we have all these unanticipated expenses, and whether related to an out-of-district placement or a homeless student, those things are proliferating now. And that's why we've discussed making some operational changes to be a little more critical of those things.
Anybody else have questions for Mr. Brown? Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I know it.
I have one statement, ma'am.
Okay, Tommy.
Unfortunately, here in Bass River, we don't have water and sewer, so no commercial will come here. Thank you.
I wasn't a shot at Bass River, Mr. Williams, I promise. I'm just using them
Do you want those?
I'm just saying that's the state that we're in, and it's very unfortunate. You're absolutely right, Nick. Nobody will come here because we don't have the things to provide that they need. That's a shame.
So the only thing, well, I'll wait for board forum.
I'm gonna wait till board forum too.
Anybody else? Okay. Moving along then, and into our work session. Anybody have anything for board forum? I did speak to Melissa regarding, the data that she had collected for start times, and we are gonna do that at our April 30th meeting. So,
Yeah, we had a presentation ready, but you weren't here, Mr. Clerk, so we're gonna save it. Okay, we'll do it in the
That
end
was, I
of the month.
appreciate that,
Yeah.
but if you would have done it, that would have been fine too.
Okay.
That was my bad.
That's all right, we can wait.
anybody else have something to bring up regarding the agenda or anything for board forum?
I'd just like to thank
I
Nick
do.
for his presentation, and putting together the handouts for us, it took you a long time, I know. I really appreciate all the work that you've done. Unfortunately, I'm hearing loud and clear, and I'm sure, it was a very difficult position for you to be in to present this to us. So I want to thank you for all your time and your hard work in that. Also the budget committee, your time and hard work as well. So unfortunately, we're gonna have to bite the bullet here. It's just the way it is, we're as good as the information that's provided to us. So I want to thank you for providing all the information so that we can make an informed decision.
Stephen, you had something?
Yeah, I do have something, as it relates to the budget. And Pat's comments in terms of thanking the budget committee, while appreciated, are not warranted. We have done nothing pretty much as a budget committee this year. We had one presentation, about 2 weeks ago, was it, Karen? 2.5 weeks ago?
Maybe 3, yeah.
Maybe 3 weeks in terms of just the overall layout of things. But we haven't, and that's why I want the board as a whole, we have a budget committee, an ad hoc committee, but we don't have a charge from our board as to what our specific responsibilities are. And my take of what they are might be different from what other people might have. And so I would like, since this is a president, you appointed the people on the committee, I would like some specific guidelines on this as to what our charge is in terms of our roles and responsibility on this budget committee. I thought last year we did a really good job. We met a lot of times, we did a thorough thing, and Kim said, last year we had a 1%, whether you think that's good or not, that was the budget committee's recommendation. This year we haven't really done anything of meaningful substance in terms of our role of assessing the budget or looking at the line items in the budget. And I need guidance, as to this path. We haven't done anything to warrant any type of praise in terms of looking at it, our
You did
responsibility.
meet.
Print
Once.
money, would you?
3 times.
Print
Committee
money.
met 3 sets of occasions.
Okay, and
Once after the
there was
budget
input that was
information was
shared.
out.
And I was thanking you for that, because it was time out of your
I
schedule.
don't know if Karen has a different perspective or a different view, she's our chair, so.
Yeah, so I was actually gonna have similar comments for board forum and really just look for direction from the board with regard to, we did meet 3 times as a committee. First time was really kind of setting up some of the challenges that Nick and Melissa, Dr. McCooley was expecting that we would work through. The last meeting, I'd say, was the most productive, where we did receive a lot of information. I think it did tie together with what some of the challenges were. We did not have an opportunity, I would say, as a budget committee to really kind of have a holistic discussion. Nick was great about giving us an opportunity to ask questions with regard to the information that was provided at that last meeting, but I do feel like the questions were isolated. Like, we see this one thing, can you help me understand what this is? I guess I was looking for some direction from the board with everything that we've updated you throughout and what you've heard from Nick and Melissa. Are we comfortable with where we landed, or do you want the budget committee to meet again? To to go through before the final budget presentation on April 30th, or where do we want to land?
So you're not only looking for direction for next year, but for right now,
Right
what
now.
would you like? I mean, I can only speak for myself.
So I think my take from the budget committee was, there's a mix there as well. Some
Right.
were satisfied, some were less satisfied. And really just with where we landed,
If I may interject, I certainly understand that the committee's wants more input. I cannot allow, line by line, the committee to make those changes. It's
See,
inappropriate.
that bothers me.
It's
You cannot
inappropriate.
allow us to look line by line at the
No,
budget.
no, I'm not
and say
saying
this
that.
is a
I
waste.
think you need to let
You
Nick
cannot
finish.
allow.
He had the floor. I think you need to let Nick finish before you.
That's my signature on the bottom, it's my signature on the bottom of the page. I'm the one statutorily that has to live within the budget.
Yeah.
As much, if I can be candid, as we're being high-fiving each other for that last year's budget, I'm living in that right now. 3% of the budget remains, 30% of the year remains. That is unhealthy. Whether you like it or not, it's not a pleasant place to be. And I have to live in that. And so in the next year's budget, I would ask you, do you go to your accountant, and if you don't like the numbers, you change them and say, I want to keep your signature on that and submit it? You don't. His accountant says, then go ahead and submit it. And I would have to take the same position. You can have the detailed budget and go through it, and we're certainly open to input. That's what the prior 3 months have been there for. But I would also say, I got here Jan 1. We are 4 months behind on everything when I got here. If we're not going to consider any extenuating circumstances for this year, I'm going to be more than frustrated with the committee trying to say that they're not getting their proper say in this matter. There is no more time to meet and go over that. The tentative budget was submitted to the county and approved by the county. I will tell you that I am committed to this budget being as good as we can do to be able to maintain a thorough and efficient education for our students. Certainly the board is well within their rights to not support the budget. I would tell you that that would be extremely short-sighted and would fail to consider any of this year's extenuating circumstances.
so for me, I'll be honest, there are some things that in the budget, I hope that the board has further discussion on. Really the board as a whole, and it's really about priorities and what we're willing to fund. And I think that those are board discussions. I hope that as we move through the school year, what we've experienced in the past is, it's in the budget, it's a slam dunk. So I think we've tried to fund the priorities and for some of the new initiatives and programs that we have. I think we also have to be cognizant of what taxpayers can afford, and that we can't strap ourselves so tightly that we can't move forward. And there are a lot of unknowns as we move forward with some of these programs, reopening of the high school. So I do agree that it's extenuating circumstances this year. I will also just say, going forward, I have never been of the mindset we get 2%. I think we have to demonstrate that we're using that 2% responsibly and be fiscally conservative with that. And I'm not saying that we won't, but I'm not comfortable saying from here on out we get 2%.
I think
I think every year we have to
And we
reevaluate that.
100%,
And I
that's
do
the
agree
discussion
this
every
is-
year.
Right,
But
a
I think
unique
that
year.
when districts are getting cut aid, the guidance they're getting from the county is you have to go to 2%. I mean, the numbers are undeniable. Our costs are going up $800,000. Our revenue is only $4. That is a $400,000 hole before we factor in any other item in the budget. Yes, there are efficiencies. We're going to get breakage. We're going to get some retirements. Those things don't equal $500,000. They might equal a couple $100,000. But we go through this with a great level of detail, and we tried because I was hearing, and to your point about goal setting and priorities, as I was hearing, we got to control these departmental budgets, and so we really focused in on that. We focused in on salary and benefits. We discussed in executive session tonight a number of non-renewals, RIFs, and retire not replace that are coming in. All of those things are significant changes to the operation to be able to support this budget. There's not just an arbitrary, well, I'd like us to be $300,000 less. I feel comfortable that I can argue every line in that budget. I also feel very comfortable that now is not the time to do that. The budget was county approved. It's been submitted. The time to do that was at the first budget committee meeting, or the second budget committee meeting, or the third budget committee meeting.
And my point to the 2%, just speaking for myself, is when Steve said, the last BA said, we're going into capital money to spend this, that we needed to do 2%, nobody, the board didn't agree. So this is the problem I'm having, is that this is not the first warning. We've had warnings all for the last 3 years. This has been coming, that the less than 2% was going to create an issue. And then we lose $220,000 last year that we didn't see coming, that the legislature didn't bother telling us until 2 months, later than they should have. And now we've gotten 85, and when you look at the numbers for the next 5 years, I don't know, what, 330 or something?
Pinelands is projected to lose from this year and forward around 800,000. It was
Oh,
$1
is
million
that much?
total for Pinelands, it was 2.2 for Little Egg.
We've been
There-
warned.
And when we landed our budget discussion last year, when we did the public one, which I guess you'll do
That's the April
next
30th meeting, yeah.
session. Last year's did end with, we would likely need more than 2% going forward, because we knew that we were tight.
Yeah.
I just need the board to indicate to the committee what our charges and what is responsibility. As a committee member, I need that. As a board member, to discuss the budget on the 30th, I don't need that. I could take, what I learned at the second governance structure on finance and the budget as a single board member to bring my views on. But as a committee member, I need to know what my charge is and what you expect of me on that committee, because right now I don't think I've done anything of value sitting on that committee.
And I'm gonna have Ms. Ernst jump in if she wants to, if I can just give my perspective on this, because I was at the meetings also. So my feeling on this is, those of you that have been assigned to this committee or volunteered for it had the time to meet with Mr. Brown. You had access to information that the rest of the board didn't. So you had a lot more information in regards to the budget. So you have that intimate knowledge of every aspect of how the budget was created. So if other board members were to ask you, you have the answers to that. So we would not have the time to share all that information. We can't, because we would be in a quorum if we did it with the entire board. So you are getting more of that information ahead of time. You can ask the questions about all of those specifics. The information that Mr. Brown provided in those folders was extensive. So that is your role. And I do agree that moving forward, Mr. Brown has made the suggestion that goals are set prior to even discussing the budget, and that could be the role of the budget committee. That, we would like this, we're suggesting this goal as as we move forward with the budget, and then you can share that information with the rest of the board of the whole, or in this forum. But you have that more upfront and very intimate knowledge of every aspect of the budget, and of course, you're gonna make your suggestions based on your personal beliefs, what you think is best for the district. But at the end of the day, we have a BA that has the degree in this, that has to, as he said, live with this on a daily basis, and has to make those decisions that are in the best interest of the district collectively. So that is what I feel their role is as committee members.
Well, my point, I think both our superintendent and our BA have done a marvelous job in fulfilling their roles and responsibility with respect to the budget. They've done exactly what's called for. They've looked at the budget, they've made cuts in the budget, they've had administrators talk about the budget, they've put together, again, from their vantage point, exactly what they did. And they've done an excellent job. The question is, the board has a role and a responsibility and a thing, and I don't feel as a member of the committee that this information was presented to me 3 weeks ago, right? And we had a 2-hour meeting, 2.5-hour meeting, in terms of the line-by-line item.
And it's been available online, right? So we have access to it online. I
He
would
asked for a
say,
more detailed projection analysis, and I'll share that with the committee. That
Last year we got this kind of detailed projection analysis, which had every line item, and then it had what that money was being spent for. So for instance, last year, if I take item 11-00211-612-0, I don't want to get into it, but the thing that was presented was just 3,000. That's not a big figure, but that's what we have here. Last year we had that same thing, 3,000, and the expenditures for that 3,000 were general office supplies, envelopes, and letterhead. That's what the 3,000 was spent for. And then on this thing, as of this year, as of January 31st, we haven't spent anything of that 3,000 item. So I just thought last year the committee did what its job was supposed to be. this year, I don't think the committee did, well, I don't know what his job is supposed to be. And we have differing views, and I need the board to tell me, you know, what the responsibility is. And should we be reporting every month? Should we be looking at how much is spent on the budget, making sure that we don't go over on particular line items? Should we be looking at specific line items to make sure, you know, you gotta, you know, otherwise there's no point in me sitting on the committee.
So I would just say if we go over line items, that's what we see every month. You know, Nick will update things and
You
transfer
get your
as
monthly
may
reports that we
be.
try to,
Those are the
when we're
transfers.
caught up and running, you get a transfer report, you get the treasurer's report, the board secretary's report. The board secretary's report is everything all in one. It's the balance sheet, statement of revenues, that's all three in one. That's the best, and it marries systems, which is our accounting software, with the cash in the bank. So it gives you that's the best indicator of, and it has every single line that you're referring to, Mr. Kubricki, with the original appropriation and the current balance in that line. My commitment as a BA, I'm required statutorily to make sure that no line in that, in Fund 10, our general fund, no line on that report is ever in the negative when it's submitted. That doesn't apply to the other funds, but it applies to the general fund. And also that no amount greater than 10% has been transferred from one line to another unless it has county approval. So I would suggest that the monitoring the success of the budget or the accuracy of the budget, the best way to do that is in the board secretary's reports, because they marry the two systems we use, the bank and our accounting software, to track all of our activity.
Could I get some direction?
Yes.
So no more than 10% can be moved at any month?
Throughout the year. So if I had, so let's use the line that Mr. Kubricki brought up, that's $3,000 appropriated in it. The most amount of money we can transfer out of that line is $300 at any point during the year, whether it's in one transfer or in 10, $30
Okay,
transfers.
thank you.
You can ask the county
I never
for,
knew that.
what's that?
Except with, I just didn't even know that rule.
Well, frankly, it was kind of my first year doing this job. It was very clear that you never asked the county for that.
Yeah,
It was,
figured.
you know, it was.
Bad accounting.
But what you're seeing now, because districts are crunched so much, and is that the county's been a little more flexible in granting that if you have a legitimate reason. And so we still haven't asked for it. I do anticipate before the end of this year, we will ask for permission to be able to cover some of the items coming up. We talked about some things in executive in some out-of-district placements. We're probably gonna have to request the 10% transfer forgiveness from the county to be able to meet those.
Thank you.
Can I be heard?
No.
You've been dying to say that.
I would
all
just
night.
say big picture, there's, just so everybody's aware,
Is it
there's
my
no,
turn? Well, I feel
Tommy,
the
excuse
same
me,
way.
Tommy,
hang on,
all right.
Excuse me?
go ahead,
Karen was speaking, and I was gonna ask you to wait till she was done talking.
go ahead.
Okay,
Go ahead.
good. Go ahead, Karen.
No, I was just gonna say big picture, so everyone is aware, there is no new lease purchase in the budget, which is when we take out kind of my term, like a 5-year
card.
loan to pay for things. There's no new lease purchase in there, so we've weaned ourselves off of that. And then also there is a specific budget for IT, which we've never had in the past, so we can track more closely and monitor the funds and hold each department accountable for that. So I think that, and then all the new programs that we've talked about have also been funded within the budget.
Thank you, Karen. Okay, Mr. Williams, you're on.
Thank you, Madam President. First of all, Dick, I'd like to thank you. You come into this game late, and I know it's very frustrating. But you have to also understand the frustrations of the Budget Committee when things come up this year that were not budgeted for and should have been. And I think that needs to be known also, that there was several things that were not mentioned or budgeted for that should have been, and maybe that would have brought us to the 2%. However, I think in these economic times that we do have a responsibility to all, including the taxpayers, the students, the district. But I truly feel that another look at things to ensure that we are funding needs and necessities is paramount, especially in this economic environment that we're all in. We have the state cutting us we have no real rise in student population. Our out-of-district costs are way out of line, but I really feel that a meeting for the last information that has been put on there, so that we can all come to a consensus in regards to this budget. But I, for one, think we need to address needs with where the budgets are and the finances are throughout the state, throughout the country, and we are surely feeling it. That is my position on this.
All right, thank you, Mr. Williams. Again, Stephen, I know you're looking for direction. You're looking for direction not only for this year, but for our upcoming budget season.
And I think any committee we have has to have charges. How
Right.
to operate a committee without do 1, do 2, 3, 4,
Okay.
this is what you're supposed to do.
Right.
And then check it out. If you don't have charges, you're just,
Right, all right, so this is what I would like to do. I'd like to say, okay, first, we're gonna look at this year, and are we willing to basically say, no, we're gonna accept the way the budget is, and, you know, unless you have a specific question, and move on, and try to set our parameters, our goals, et cetera, for next year. So let's look at this year.
Yeah, and I think Nick has committed to, you know, again, just to reiterate kind of what Mr. Williams said, you know, I think we all have to consider Nick stepped into the game late. We're thankful he came on board. Did share a lot of information holistically about the budget. It was, in my view, more transparent with regard to staffing levels and some of the revenues that factor into the budget. And we did talk about starting earlier next year.
Oh, for sure. I mean, typically for me, the budget process is gonna start with a memo in October, you know, where they get the budget, the department heads get their budget worksheets. They submit those by early December. And we're going into January in, every district has to cut from the budget to be able to get to the revenue number every year. But we're doing that process in early January, mid-January, as opposed to late March, or, you know. Certainly I appreciate the board being considerate of the extenuating circumstances we had this year. My goal was transparency. I'm a taxpayer in New Jersey. I can assure you, I'm not loosey-goosey with tax dollars. This is, the transparency about it and the disciplined spending is something that you have my commitment to, and it's something we're gonna hold the administration accountable for.
All right, to go back, and again, I'm trying to kind of settle one thing at a time. Right now, I personally am giving my own opinion. I would charge our budget committee with nothing else. I have looked, and I'm not a huge budget person, but I clearly understand we're in a pickle. I believe we do need to go to the 2%. I mean, I gotta pay taxes here too. Am I all right with what you people have done and what Nick has presented? Yes, I don't think we have any choice right now. That's my own feeling. I don't know how the rest of you feel that are not sitting on that committee, but that's my feeling. So my feeling is, I'm good with what you have done, and I can live with it. So I guess it's the rest of you and how you feel. So these people have some direction. We could beat this. This is like a dead horse. We
I
could
would
beat it all
agree.
night.
I personally don't think there's any reason to further meet. I'm comfortable with it. I'm not a budget person either. That's why I've never wanted to serve on that committee. But I'm comfortable with what Nick's done. I think he's been very transparent. Like I said earlier, he stepped into a position. And again, I will say, we're only as good, our vote's only as good as the information that's been provided to us. And I want to thank him and Dr. McCoy for all the information that we've been provided to make some very, very tough decisions here, even tonight in executive. So I'm comfortable. I really don't feel that there's any need to meet any further, and I think we need to move on. I really do.
Christy, how you feeling?
No, I agree. I think we're tight, and we don't really have any options.
No, we don't.
Or any. And I think.
Okay,
it's what we
Kim.
need to do.
You know, I just don't like, I appreciate everything, but I think at the fund balance, there's some there that we might lose, and we have $800,000 looking at us. I think that if there's anything you could do to even if you put it on the fund balance and you don't put it on the 2%, I don't know if you can do that. But to me, it's leaving money on the table. So
You have to go
that's
to
what
2%
bothers
to use your bank cap,
Right.
and you can only use enough bank cap that you can justify with expenses. And certainly we could run
Well, we
up
don't wanna
tabs,
run
but that would be
expenses
counter,
up.
yeah, so that would be counter to the,
And it
to the
does, it can't
suggestions
go
of the
into the
committee.
fund balance, that is low, or not fund balance, the cash.
The only way we recover fund balance is to have a budget, to have a budgeted expenditures of, $22 million and spend 21, and then let the other million flow through, and it becomes excess surplus, and you start to slowly build your fund balance back up that way. Or if you have a little bit at the end of the year, you're saying, let's make a deposit into capital reserves. We've done that in previous years here, where you say, after June 30th, we will make deposits in capital emergency and maintenance reserves not to exceed $500,000. And then when you get to the end of the year and you have an idea what your budget picture, where you're ending up the budget year, you make those contributions to the accounts. I can tell you that we can't make that motion this year. We need the extra money to flow through for next year's budget.
Right, so if we use the bank account this year, and we find as we go through next school year, things work out in our favor, we're very prudent and, watch the budget carefully, and we do have extra at the end, we can, at that point, correct, transfer it into that.
Yeah,
So
it
you're
has to be
not
a
allowed-
motion.
You're not allowed
that.
to budget for it, is basically what you're saying as well. Like this
We
year,
move
you
extra.
can't, well, we can't do it until we haven't spent it.
You can budget it in the original budget to make those deposits. I would tell you that's probably a
Unusual.
better bet to wait till June so you're not stuck in that position if you don't want to be.
Okay.
So that's why you tend to add the motion towards the end. So if the financial flexibility is there, that you can make those contributions.
Okay, I appreciate it.
Any-
Well, I was on the budget
Yeah.
committee, and I have been listening to everyone. I would also like to thank Nick with all the information that was online and stuff. I'd like to suggest that perhaps, because it seems like we're hanging by our thumbs every budget year, and we're always up against it, that maybe we look at, especially with your projections that you have, is a 5-year plan. Because this year's budget, it affects 4 years out. Next year's budget is going to affect 4 years out. And maybe we, instead of just going year to year and hanging by our thumbs, praying that we're going to have enough money, we kind of project things out a little bit. And next year's budget, instead of cutting it so tight, make sure before we cut it so tight that we're not hamstringing ourselves 2 or 3 years down the road. So maybe early on in the process, that's something we want to look at, is a 5-year plan.
I'd like to marry that with a 5-year facilities plan.
And our
But I know
strategic
that has
plan.
been working on, and
The
our
Well-
facilities
strategic
plan and our
plan,
strategic
to
plan,
take a
Right.
much
which will
longer
be
view.
approved at the April meeting.
Because really, the budget needs to support those.
Right.
Right, and I think, Stephen, that I will, by all means, if you want New Jersey school boards to come in and talk to us about the best practices in setting up a budget for a budget committee, I'd be more than happy to arrange that. The other thing is I think that in the future, maybe there will be, just given the initiatives that have now been put into place, that we know that we're gonna support those initiatives. So that in itself will help drive our budget and obviously be one of our priorities, because I think you're right. There needs to be goals, we need to set priorities, and we need to remember, you don't change them in the middle of the road. They've gotta be, this is what we wanna do, and this is what we've gotta do everything we possibly can to make it happen. Does that help at all? No.
Yes, I know the board now, what my role is on the committee. So the committee basically has no more role for this year.
Right.
And as a board member in the April 30th budget meeting, that's when I have a responsibility as a
Yes,
board member.
absolutely.
Then, and I will exercise that at
Right,
that meeting.
and again, Nick has said that he does wanna start that process early. Thank God he'll have his feet on the ground by then and not be trying to find everything that seems to be
And I
missing.
repeat again, Melissa and Nick, I thought did an
Right.
excellent job and did exactly what they're supposed to do.
Right.
And I just want to do the same.
Okay, thank you, Stephen, very much. Anybody else?
I would just like to say that as a district and as a board member elected to this board, that we ensure the public that we are funding necessities because unfortunately, the tax bill going up every year is crippling everyone.
Well, and I would agree, Tommy, and the state certainly isn't helping us any.
Oh, no. I'd like to make that statement also, as I have many times in the past. When the state mandates something, they are constitutionally, by the state constitution, supposed to fund it, and they do not. Repeatedly, they do not, and they just keep cutting and cutting and putting more responsibilities on us. Thank you.
Agreed. I have one additional thing. Earlier this evening, this did not come to me until after the last board meeting, but I gave you each a copy of a letter that was addressed to Dr. McCooley and myself. And as president of the board, I have to do my due diligence and make sure that you are aware of that letter. It is a concern from one of our parents of a special needs student. And so I hope you all have had the opportunity to read that, and that when your decisions are made, obviously that you take these concerns into consideration. Anybody else have anything for board forum, or is there any new business? I don't know of anything new. Okay, all right, great. Yes?
There's things to be voted on.
Yeah.
We didn't get there yet, Tommy.
Okay.
All right, moving on to residents forum. These are for agenda items only. So if you would like to speak, boy, I can't talk anymore. Please. Have at it.
I know it's so. I'm not sitting here next time. I feel ignorant with my back to it.
Not a problem. Charlie Roth and Tuckerton, nice to see you all again. Quicker than I thought would be the April 30th meeting. I was very interested in the agenda with the budget. I would ask going forward, if you're going to have a public meeting discussing budget items, you're all looking at things. You should have handouts. I mean, that should be, if you're going to discuss something, and it doesn't just have to be the budget. Dr. McCooley had information that she was putting on the screen. That should be handout material. Much of what was on the screen last meeting in all of the subject matters was very rapid, and there's no way to discern what it is if you're sitting there. It's just not going to happen. You're performing your due diligence by presenting it, but it's not in a usable form. Tonight, very much so, because you were talking about budget items that had tactile information, and I don't know it.
If I may, everything that was covered tonight will be covered in the April 30th discussion and part of the presentation.
You mean will?
It will be, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. All of those items will be part of the presentation, which will be available on the board's website as well.
Okay, so for those of us who maybe don't have the website or didn't know where to look for it, for instance, tonight's meeting was not readily available information on the school district's website. So, what I'm suggesting though is it would be helpful to us, unless it affects that line item of paper and office supplies, if you could print out some of the information that you're allowed to. I mean, obviously you've got discrete information, but that would be a tremendous help. And just out of curiosity, in the overall budget, I mean, in Little Egg, there are a lot of non-residential homes being taxed. They're not sending students. They're, Bennies or Shoebies or whichever direction you're looking at, right? So, I mean, most vacation communities have a buffer in their tax base. They're not being put, the services aren't being put upon. And I'm just wondering how that may relate. Like up in Point Pleasant, they're okay. They've got a lot of summer homes, Long Beach Island, et cetera. I'd be curious to know how that affects this school district. if there's any benefit to it, if it's something that has no impact, never thought of before. So it's something I'm going to ask again on April 30th if foreshadowing.
We have a significant retirement community, retirement population.
And exactly, right.
Yeah,
You know,
but I don't know if it's as significant. I
didn't want to profile it.
I don't know if it's a second home as much as it's retirement.
Yeah. So,
We have several age-restricted communities around.
right, so they're not presenting demand on the resource. You would think that would be a something, you know, wind under the balloon to lift it a little. But the one other question as far as agenda items is, and by the way, I liked what you were looking for, you know, that detail as far as, you know, what is your committee looking to be accomplished? But the technical question, you mentioned that you can only move 10% from a line item if it's not being used, or if you have surplus, you can only use 10% of the budgeted line item.
Not that second part, the first part. If I appropriated money into a line, I
So
can move
$3,000, you can only move 300.
without county approval, yes.
If you have 301, you can move 300, or if you didn't use the 3,000.
Only 10% of the original appropriation can be transferred.
Regardless of.
So if the
so long
original
as that 10%
appropriation was
wasn't used.
$1 million, you get 10% of $1 million. If the original appropriation was 300, you get 10% of 300.
Right, and if you've used 90%, can you still move that 10%?
Yes. Any 10%, first 10 or last 10, doesn't matter.
Does that apply to payroll line items?
All lines in the budget.
So with all the rifts and firings that have taken place, that's found money then, right?
There are always efficiencies in the budget. When you lose people, that money always rolls through, but there's also a number of unanticipated costs that happen throughout the year.
So the next
offset.
question coming, you know, unforeseen, I forget what the actual accounting phrase for it is, but unforeseen income or unforeseen, you know.
We don't get a lot of unforeseen income.
Well, lack of expenses, or uncharged expenses, or whatever the right phrase is, you get the idea. What you haven't wound up spending money for. I'd be curious on April 30th to know if you have a budget view of the year's budget, and this is the bucket of unused money, the 10% we can use. That would be
Well, it won't give you the 10% as a specific line, but you will see the board secretary's report is typically an attachment in the monthly budget. They have to be within 60 days of the month close. The board secretary's report contains that information. It shows you every line in the budget, the original appropriation, the current expenditure, and the remaining unspent.
Not having looked at it, just for, you know, the moment, do you have that pooled? Is that a total number that you can come up with?
It's on that report, yeah.
Okay. Well, I'll wait for the general items, general topics to pick up. Thank you.
Also, I think you let me again go over my 3 minutes.
Anybody else? All right then, moving on to our committee reports. I would like a motion to improve those items under instructional. So it would be items A1 and B, C. That's it? No, that's personnel. I'm sorry.
Just A1?
That's just A1.
Motion?
Second.
Hold on, can I believe we were gonna table
Yes.
item B, personnel.
Yeah. Do you want that done now, or do you
Well,
want it
that's
done
in-
when we come
We're
to
just doing
personnel?
A1.
We're just
Sorry.
doing
My apologies,
instructional.
yeah.
So I have a motion, I'll make the
Right.
motion for A1.
Okay, do we have a
Second.
second?
Second?
Mr. Kubricki?
Yes.
Ms. McVeigh?
Yes.
Ms. Palladino?
Yes.
Ms. Paklakua?
Yes.
Ms. Hamadel?
Yes.
Mr. Williams?
Yes.
Ms. Ernst?
Yes.
Ms. Chambers?
Yes.
Motion carries.
And Nick, you better guide me through this. Under personnel, how do you want this done? A motion and then a tabling?
You do a motion for B1.
Okay, can I have a motion for B1.
And I'd like to table item 1A for further information.
Second.
All right, roll call. Mr. Kubricki?
Yes.
Ms.
So-
McVeigh?
Yes.
We're voting to table,
Table.
Yeah,
correct?
voting to table this
Voting
item.
table.
Ms. Palladino?
Yes.
Ms. Pakwakua?
Yes.
Ms. Hennadel?
Yes.
Mr. Williams?
Yes.
Ms. Chambers?
Yes.
Ms. Ernst?
Yes.
Motion carries.
All right, now, I still have to go to 1B, right?
Yes.
Okay. We have a motion for leave of absence 1B.
So moved.
Any discussion?
A second I need
Second.
first.
Any discussion?
Any discussion? Thank you, Kim.
Mr. Kubricki?
Yes.
Mr. Williams?
Yes.
Ms. McVeigh?
Yes.
Ms. Palladino?
Yes.
Ms. Pakwakua?
Yes.
Ms. Hennadel?
Yes.
Ms. Chambers?
Yes.
Ms. Ernst?
Yes.
Motion carries.
We have a motion to accept item C, report of the board secretary, business administrator, items 1 through 3.
Are there changes to item 2 that we need to?
In the agreement, the date will be changed to March 20th.
Okay,
Thank you, Betty Ann.
All right,
And can we have discussion?
Well, we haven't had our
Okay.
motions yet.
All right.
Motion.
Second.
Discussion.
Thanks, Kim.
Sorry.
Discussion.
Yeah, item 1, I had asked, and I apologize, it was late, whether or not this would be student funded or district
I
funded?
answered that on the, I can answer it again
Yeah.
if you want to. It is, they're fundraising for it, and they did a fundraiser recently, last Friday there was an event, but they are fundraising for the money, and the bus is being donated from Durham.
Okay. So do we expect that they will fundraise what they need, or will the
Yes.
district be expected to? I just want to make sure whether or not the district is going to be expected to
They have,
pick up the rest.
they have been, expected to fund it themselves, to fundraise for it.
And it is in Freehold?
Yes.
Yeah.
Looks great.
How can we be guaranteed that they'll have sufficient funds, because it calls for $15,000?
Exactly.
What happens if they don't raise the $15,000?
Well, if they don't raise the money and the board doesn't approve the rest, they don't go.
So the board would still have to approve.
But they are anticipating, I can get you an update, they had a couple events already, I can let you know how much they've already raised.
Wow, I think there's an upcoming one too.
Yeah.
That I saw.
And I
You
also
said
just
that.
wanted
Yes.
to interject,
You want to get her
the
something.
contract itself, and I'm not familiar with the facility, I don't know if it's indoor, outdoor, it looks like it is.
It says indoor on the top.
It's indoor.
Okay, so the go-karts and everything are indoor?
I've been there.
Okay, no, because there was a clause in the contract that caught my eye, I just wanted to make sure you're aware of it. It talks about if there's inclement weather, they have the right to close, so that's why I wanted to make sure it wasn't, okay. Because it says if they close at their choice, the date would be rescheduled at their choice.
Yeah, that
Maybe
was,
snow in June.
yeah, so if they
Let's
do
hope not.
close it then, I mean, and we're still liable, they pick another date, we're still liable. I think there was a couple, more than one clause in that contract that was problematic when I read through it. I thought there were about 3 clauses that I wasn't too thrilled with in that contract, and that being primarily one.
There's
The
a-
date they could cancel, and then we're stuck with another date, and we have to still pay for it and still go, even if we have nobody going to
Yeah,
it.
and there was another one about a 2-project graduation in the event that there were 2 in the
Another
Right,
schedule.
right.
And then there's the chaperones, and we have to provide 8 chaperones when you think this is their function, and they should be responsible for chaperoning and the extra cost there.
So we usually send chaperones wherever we go.
We do send them, and they're getting their 4 hours of their volunteer hours for that, and then they do get a comp day for project graduation.
And is the change because the location that we traditionally use is St. Francis on the Island, and was that not available?
It's never available on Fridays.
So I think one of the reasons that this was more appealing to, and I don't want to speak on behalf of the advisors who did a lot of this work with the students, we have to have multiple dates for our graduation because of rain dates. It's only, outsiders are only option. So this was more flexible in regards to the multiple dates. And they did knock 5,000 off the price automatically for our students to have project graduation there. So they felt they did get a good deal on it. And as I said, Durham donated the bus for us.
That's nice.
Any other?
I have a question.
Go ahead.
We're listening.
Keep us in suspense.
Okay. When did this all come about, and why wasn't the idea of it even discussed prior to tonight? And the cost, if they don't have the people we're still paying, I'd like to know the amount that has been fundraised. And at the bottom of it, it's compelling project graduation for the payment, not this board, and if this is approved, it's gotta be a board-approved, event.
That's what we're doing, isn't it?
Right.
Well, we're approving the contract. I would think
Right.
that next month we'd approve the trip.
Right, it would be on the
Right.
checklist.
My suggestion is that we can amend the motion to make the contract subject to attorney review so we can make any changes that we need
I
to make.
like that.
Including, making, a Board of Education and those types of things and have some discussions, if that's appropriate.
That's fine.
Sounds good.
And,
So we can
yeah, so
approve
my
it so
other
we can
question
still
with
use
that,
it.
Amy, would be the liability on our insurance. Is this something that needs to be run by our insurance company with the things that they have there?
All board sponsors events are covered by our policies.
So we're approving it pending board approval of the
Yes.
contract.
So you're approving
Attorney
it,
review.
subject to attorney review, so
Right.
once we straighten everything out, and I'll talk with, Mr. Brown and Dr. McCooley, and that way the students won't lose the opportunity because
Right.
you're approving it tonight.
Right.
Yeah, because it looks like there's a payment that's due April 17th, and we don't meet again till the 30th, so.
Right, okay.
Huh?
So when we vote, please understand we're voting that it's pending attorney review,
Subject to attorney review.
subject.
So I know, Amy, you've looked at it a little bit. What did you think of this contract? Because I thought it was atrocious from our vantage point.
It's a contract that is designed for a business, and that's what it is. It's a business contract that's advantageous to the business. And they're providing a service, a business service that we want to utilize, so it is going to be advantageous to them. So we might not have a little wiggle room, but we can check to just make sure who's the proper party, what's going on, and just to make sure we're binding everything the right way, and make sure that the dates make sense with the advisor. So we'll do that one more time, go over it. But it is, Mr. Kubricki, it is a business contract that is designed to be advantageous to a business.
So when you do a review of this contract and you find changes how is that gonna then work if we approve it tonight?
So what typically happens is we go through and we do the changes to make sure we're using the appropriate entity, that the dates work, that the cancellation policies work. We can try and negotiate those items. There's certain things in here that we would not be able to negotiate, such as if they cancel because of an act of God or war, stuff like that. That's standard contract language that you're not gonna terminate. The same thing, if there's some type of a major weather event that cancels it, you're not gonna be able to necessarily cancel that, but we can work on language about mutually agreed upon date and stuff like that if things need to be rescheduled. We can also try and talk to them and negotiate about refunds and those types of things. So those are conversations we can have with Dr. McCooley, because they might have already, the advisors might have already had some of those conversations. We can see if we can push them a little bit further, because trust me, I don't mind being the bad guy saying, listen, our attorney's giving us a hard time, is there a way you can bend with this? But you have to be aware that because they're a business, they probably want other groups to come in, so they might say, no, we're not gonna bend on this issue, so that's why you're agreeing in concept, but the decisions made would be to protect the board, but at the end of the day, it has to be what your administration's recommending they can live with to still have the contract move forward for the benefit of the children.
So if we vote yes and there's no changes to the contract, then we are bound by our yes vote tonight.
Like, we always have our contract signed first in real estate, and then the attorney review starts.
This has got to be signed by the 17th though, so once.
So what you're doing is you're approving it subject to attorney review. So if we can't get the minimal changes we need from an administrative perspective, then you're not having attorney review and it's not being approved. And I would come back on the 30th to say, we couldn't meet those expectations, we need a plan B.
Okay.
I have
Okay,
a little
any
bit of
other,
experience in project graduation side. Through my office, we do Southern Regionals. The only concern I would have is if they're not closed to the general public during this, that other members, other people can come in and bring contraband in.
Right.
Whether it's drug or alcohol, and it's easily transferred in a bathroom or whatever the case may be. So, I would want to know that if it's not being closed to the public, what are their precautionary measures to make sure those things don't happen?
that's a very good
So-
point.
Make sure we'll address that too.
Yeah, it's 11 PM till 4 AM, so I guess the question is, are they open past 11? Right, the contract reads we can't get in till 11.
Well, do you know they hold concerts and different things there, I don't know how
Okay.
late they go. I
Right,
just
so they
know that
could be
that's
open
something
late.
that we specify in our contract.
Okay.
It's a good, will be closed to the, or if it's, there's another project graduation going
Yeah.
on, what are the measures to make sure that that doesn't happen? Because that
That's a
defeats
good
the whole
point.
purpose of having it.
Thank you.
And I agree with what Betty Ann was just saying. I was going to say, how are we going to ensure the safety of all of our staff and students when we're not controlling the environment there, which we are not, unless we're sending security to check everyone as they go in, and I don't think they would allow that.
Well, we don't
should
control
check
the
somebody on the
environment
bus.
like when we had it at St. Francis either.
Our students are typically checked
Yes,
when they
we
get on the
did.
bus.
Oh, yeah, our students are checked on the when they get
Yeah.
on the bus, absolutely.
We get a pretty good amount of police officers to volunteer to do it, usually the resource officers and stuff like that, but we get some of our police officers to volunteer. It might be something that the advisors might want to request,
Right,
it helps a little.
okay. Any
And
other,
my other concern, Madam President, is the fact that we don't know how much they fundraise and what our possible exposure could be.
right, well, and
Well,
Dr.
we have-
McCauley did say that she would get that for us.
Maybe we can change the motion to subject to attorney review and administrative approval. That way you have the piece with Dr. McCooley and Mr. Brown making sure that they've checked to make sure how much fundraising and all of those things. That way maybe it'll address Mr. Williams' concerns.
Is that good, Johnny?
That would make me feel much better.
Okay, everybody good with that? Alrighty. So, again, do we have motions?
We have a motion for Ms. Hannadel, seconded by Ms. Chambers for item 1, subject to attorney review and an admin approval. Item 2, change the date to March 20th. Item 3, listed as is.
Right.
Any other questions?
Feel good?
Mr. Williams?
Yes.
Mr. Kubricki?
Yes.
Mrs. McVeigh?
Yes.
Mrs. Palladino?
Yes.
Mrs. Paklakua?
Yes.
Ms. Hannadel?
Yes.
Ms. Chambers?
Yes.
Ms. Ernst?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay, residents forum, this is on general topics, so if you would like to speak, please come up to the microphone.
Pass it down.
Roth, Tuckerton, again. If it's possible, could you, everybody that has a student in Pinelands, would you raise your hand?
Currently?
Or had them?
Had?
Currently,
Currently.
I'm sorry, currently.
You mean the family or in?
Yeah, family. Okay, and who's been on the board less than 4 years?
Yeah,
It's general
wait,
topic.
one
I'm
minute,
sorry.
Mr. Roth, this is inappropriate, we don't poll the
It's
board.
public comment.
This is your chance,
It's a general topic.
For a comment.
I'm
but it's your
curious
chance
about
to
the young-
speak to us, not poll the board.
Right.
What laws did I just, what is that?
So typically, public comment is your chance to make a comment to the board, specifically
It's a
direct to the
general
board
topic.
president.
It's a general
So
topic.
it is on a public
And my
comment.
curiosity is the
So what you're
background
doing
of
is
the board.
asking questions back and forth and
Well,
asking
I
the board
asked
to give
questions earlier
information.
too.
That was on a specific agenda item. You're asking the board members specific questions. Again,
It
it's
was a
public
general
comment.
question. All right, if you don't want to answer anything, that's fine. I'm going to ask the question on a general topic, which is, when would we be seeing the Myers report, the Hand report?
We've addressed these
No, you
numerous
said you were
times.
going to give them.
No, I did not.
Yeah, you
Mrs.
did.
Myers did not do a report. We made that very clear. And I told you we were checking with the board attorney about the other report, and Mrs. Hauk has answered that already. We've answered this numerous times.
No, you've said we're going to check and see what we can do.
And then it was answered
Where,
The last
to whom
meeting.
was it answered?
to the public.
When?
Last meeting.
No, it wasn't. You
Amy?
Yep.
Yes, please.
So there is no report from Ms. Myers, and
What did she produce?
there is no report.
Did she produce notes?
There
So
is
again,
no
there is no report.
Did she create a verbal dialogue?
Again, there is no report. I'm trying to answer your question.
You're not.
So, but I just did. I said there is no
I didn't
report.
ask if there was a report. I said,
Okay.
was there
I
another
don't-
form? Did she produce something in another format?
No.
So what I'm saying is there is no report.
How much did we pay her?
0.
Okay, how much did we pay Mr. Hand for his report? Or whatever it might have been called?
I don't have a running total of Mr. Hand's expenses.
Is he still per diem contract?
Yes, he's per diem.
So we're paying for Miss Ward till June 30th. We're paying for Mr. Hand till when?
He's approved until June 30th if
June
his,
30th.
if his services are
And
needed.
we're gonna backdate the agreement which you just all approved for Miss Lichtenwalder. So that right there's gotta be 100,000, that's a quarter of your next year's shortfall that you were projecting. So,
I don't know how you got to that number, but I would
I'm
probably
just-
argue with you that it's not $100,000.
okay, 50,000, so it's an eighth, okay? It's some amount of money. The point being that we weren't given any of the information, again. You answered it, I don't know what the answer was, I was here last time. We also now see that the contract for Ms. Lichtenwalder is backdated to March 1st, which is 3 weeks prior to when we had our meeting on March 20th.
No, I thought we said a different.
It's March 20th.
When you're done speaking, I'll respond to all of your comments.
Okay, go ahead.
I'm waiting until you're finished,
I'm not
so.
completely finished.
So then I'm
but-
waiting until you're
Don't
finished.
wait.
The other thing was, and I asked this last time too, was Dr. McCooley, in several public forums, did say that based on what she saw from Mr. Hand's information and what she saw in her term since last July, that she wanted to go in a different direction. But I haven't seen, or I haven't read what that different direction is. Are you able now to produce what that other direction is?
Yes, we have Mr. Hand and Mrs. Lichtenwalder here.
That's the different directions? That's the,
Yeah.
that's different personnel, that's not a direction. Ms. Lichtenwalder, when she changed the class designations to multiple disabled MD from Little Lake Harbor, were you part of that decision-making process?
Again, we're not gonna have a question back and forth, so when you're through all of your questions, we can certainly
One last
respond
question.
as appropriate.
One last question. When do I get to ask questions? I'm sorry, I don't mean to play games with you.
You can't answer Little Lake Harbor questions either.
Well, most of them, 90% of what I just asked was Pinelands Region.
Just
So
ask a
that was
Little Lake Harbor
that was
question regarding a
one
program.
little
So we can't
Little
answer
Lake
that.
Harbor question. Okay.
So when you're finished, all of your questions, I've been writing notes down, I'll
Okay.
respond, but we're waiting until the
Last
direction of
question,
the board president, I'm
a few
waiting
more
until you're
questions
finished.
if you're gonna write them down is, does Mr. Brown, do you have a CPA?
No, sir.
Do you have an MBA? Don't answer that. Okay.
Because
Do you have
again,
the
I
state
just,
certification for
I
business
just
administration?
explained that we are going to answer questions when you're done, and you're ignoring that, and you're continuing to ask questions.
You
You're
said
not
when I'm
directing,
done.
you're not directing them to the board president, which I've said now twice. All of your comments
I'm
have to
sorry, I
be
missed
directed
that
to the
part.
board president.
Does
This is,
Brown have a CPA?
I'm not gonna answer that question.
Does he have a master's degree?
We will wait until you're finished with all of
Does
your
he have the
questions, Mr. Roth.
certification, the state certification for business administrator?
Are you
In the
finished?
school district?
Are you finished?
Yes.
Yes, he does.
Again, let me just, you're finished all of your questions?
For tonight, yeah.
Okay. One, I just want to say, we don't talk about personnel in public. I think Dr. McCooley has said that, I think Ms. Ernst has said that. We do not comment on personnel, nor do we discuss personnel in public. Number two, we do not discuss other boards of education and what happens in other school districts in our board meeting. We talk about Pinelands Regional School District.
You're right, I did ask one question about Little Egg. I'm
Again,
sorry.
this is not your time to talk, you are finished. It's now my time to respond to your questions. That's appropriate.
Yes.
When we made the agenda item tonight for the Shared Special Service Special Education Director, there was an announcement from the business administrator as well as a board member noting that that date was revised to the appropriate date, which was March 20th. That was the date the board had approved the agreement. I already answered your question about the Myers audit, that there is no report.
I did say what.
Again, this is my time to talk.
I'm sorry, this is so tiring
No,
for you.
again, you
You
are
don't-
out of order. You have asked your questions. We have politely asked you, are you finished with your questions? You said yes. Our attorney has
That
said,
was an
when
observation,
you were,
not a question.
Mr. Roth, you
I
can
think
sit
we're-
down.
yeah.
If you're all finished, thank you very much.
How you doing? AJ Barchetto, Parker Down Drive, Little Lake Harbor. My question, I guess, is in change of philosophy for special education. Special education is developed based on program need for the students individually, so it's not really on philosophy. And I guess it's not really a question, it's just a statement that I want out there that we need to build programs for need, not generally on philosophy. And I'm a little concerned if there's a philosophy change where there are issues in the past that are gonna come up that things were done illegally or not done appropriately for students, and then make sure going forward that those students' needs are being met. So it's just a concern that I have, being a special education advocate. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Oh, no, left. All right, moving on to board forum. Karen, you have anything you'd like to add?
No, just thank you for coming to our special meeting, and we'll be back here again, not next week, the week after, the 30th.
Yes, the 30th. Kim?
Same, thanks for coming.
Kristen?
Thank you.
Ian?
Thank you.
Mr. Capricki?
Nothing further. Thank you.
Tommy, you have anything you want to add?
Yes, unfortunately. Mr. Brown, I apologize for you getting attacked like that by one of our residents. And Amy, thank you for answering those questions and waiting for the questions and then answering them. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Tommy. Mrs. Chambers?
Yes, thank you for coming to our special meeting, which was advertised. Thank you.
I have absolutely nothing. Could we please have a motion to adjourn?
Motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Who wants to stay?
Nope.
All
I'm
opposed?
eating.
None.
Are you kidding me?
We are adjourned at 8:40.